floor. It is not a bit. And by the way, for those who are wondering about the structure itself, both towers appear to be structurally sound, and not only small pieces of debris are circulating in the air around it where the explosions occurred. The buildings themselves seem to be intact as far as their structure is concerned. There have been talk over the years about the threat of terrorism making the buildings fall down onto the streets. But I can reassure everybody that they seem to be holding up fairly well while efforts are going forward to fight the fires and whatever happened in those two towers.
Now we can see smoke emanating from many of the floors of the two towers. We see to the left of your picture there smoke coming out of the floors above where the plane crashed into, I believe that's the North Tower that we're looking at there.
Thousands of people gathered where I am here at City Hall Park, in front of City Hall, just watching what's going on. It's very difficult they come by and they say, what happened? And you just got to say something hit the building, and then something hit both buildings.
Well, we saw clearly, we didn't see the first one, but we saw clearly that a plane deliberately crashed into one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center. That was the second plane. So two planes crashed into the upper floors of each of the World Trade Center towers. And I understand now that Port Authority headquarters are in one of those buildings somewhere near that location.
Jim, I don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an aircraft, or to be more specific, some people said they thought they saw a missile. I don't know how people could differentiate, but we might keep open the possibility that this was a missile attack on these buildings.
Ali, I must say that we have an eyewitness who said it was a large plane that crashed first. And then as we were watching the live picture here in the studio, we saw a plane crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
And clearly untold carnage must be the result of those suicide terrorist activities.
That was a large commercial
plane.
jet.
The gentleman, Jim Friedel, the gentleman from Hoboken who was watching, said the first one looked to him like a 727.
Like a 727.
Well, look at the wingspan, the swath it cut through the towers.
Yeah, lots of speculation, no doubt. And for years, we have been talking about security from terrorists here in this major city. It makes you wonder how, if it indeed were two planes, we did see one, how did they manage to get into the area and to just hit the plane like that?
These are all the things that are going to have to be answered. How could two large planes just that quickly get out of control from our local...
Presumably commercial aircraft. Now, we can't speak to the first one, but that second aircraft that went through looked like a large twin-engine or three-engine jet. Those are simply not around for private aviation.
Yeah, that's not your Piper Cub.
No, it is not.
That's obviously designed to do considerable damage to those buildings on this day when we're holding a primary election in New York City.
Now, I would imagine...
Ali?
Jim, what you're saying could be a drone aircraft. That's an aircraft that's guided electronically to its target without having a pilot. Now, that is a possibility as well. In the meantime, I can tell you that flames are shooting out of both towers now. The heaviest being on the south tower, the northeast corner of the south tower of the World Trade Center, but there's a considerable blaze going on the north tower as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any way of finding out exactly what is located on those upper floors. You'd like to just cross your fingers and pray to God that maybe there weren't a lot of people up there at
state
that
office
time.
buildings,
Yeah.
and of course lots of commercial office buildings on those spaces as well. I know during the last terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, my son was in the building, and he told stories of groping down through the staircases
Yes.
for some 50 floors before he, thank God, got out safely.
In fact, the governor has an office in the World Trade Center as well. There is one thing. After the bombing of the World Trade Center in the 90s, I do know that there were major efforts to have disaster drills, to have a preparedness plan in the event of an awful tragedy like this. But one has to wonder how, with two gigantic skyscrapers burning, the fire department and emergency services can handle both in that confined space without a tremendous
Sometimes, no
death
matter
toll.
how much you set in place, how much you try to prepare for, until it actually happens, it's just not the same thing.
Again, you're looking at a live picture of the World Trade Center, where shortly before 9 o'clock this morning, and then shortly after 9 o'clock, planes apparently deliberately crashed into the buildings. Alani DeVito, are you there? Alani DeVito, are you there? I understand we have another eyewitness to this catastrophe. Lonnie DeVito, are you there? Apparently we lost Lonnie, but again...
This may be confusing to some people because in a sense it is a little confusing to me. We every now and then see what looks like, I don't know if it's the bottom of a chopper that is swinging back and forth.
That would be our...
That is ours.
That would be
Okay.
the rudders from our chopper
I see.
every once in a while.
Hey, Jim.
Lonnie DeVito, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Lonnie. Thank you.
Hi.
This is Jim Ryan in the studio. Can you tell us what you heard and saw when the blast took place?
Right now, I was actually talking to my brother on the phone about what happened. I was on my roof and I saw something from where I am. I really can't see what it is. I saw something go into the other building because from where I am, I could see the World Trade Center. I run downstairs and I see on the news that it looks like another fighter jet is what it looks like. And from my house, I can see all the smoke that's into Dyker Heights. I can see all of that. It's ridiculous. I can't believe all of this is happening, honestly.
You say you're in Dyker Heights,
Yes.
Lonnie?
Yes.
Okay. And could you hear the blast from where you were?
No, I couldn't hear the blast, but I saw something, and it didn't look pretty. Exactly how I can't explain it in any other way. I'm in shock right now.
All right, Lonnie. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So obviously visible but not audible from way out in Dyker Heights.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, Ollie.
They appear to be getting water on this fire. If you can see the south tower, the black smoke is getting progressively lighter. This indicates steam, which indicates that fire authorities are getting water on the flames. In the meantime, flames are still spitting out from both towers. Now, while the whatever hit the building crashed on the north side of the north tower, we see flames coming out of the east side, facing Queens and Brooklyn, if you will. The flames on the south tower, which appear to be getting lesser and lesser, is where the smoke is getting progressively lighter and lighter, indicating that the fire officials are getting closer to putting this fire out.
All right, Ollie, thank you. We are now told that the FBI had been investigating a plane hijacking before these crashes took place. So there is the possibility that perhaps one or more planes were hijacked out of one of the local airports and then taken and directly flown into the World Trade Center, smashing the buildings themselves, and Lord knows what carnage took place
Hey,
inside.
Jim, can you put out a note, or maybe I will myself? People have been coming up to me to try to reach their family and friends and relatives to tell them that they're okay. We ought to put it out that no one that we know of was hurt on the ground or in any place around the building, that this outrage appears to be concentrated on the buildings themselves. So anybody who has a relative or a friend in Lower Manhattan, they are not likely to have been affected physically by what happened here.
All right. Again, you're looking at a split screen, two different shots of the World Trade Center. Dave, you want to say something?
I would wonder at this point, given what's happened now, what you just mentioned about the FBI, the fact that it is now seemingly two planes, if the military or someone is going to scramble and try and protect the airspace around the southern tip of Manhattan, and indeed what the situation is out at the airports right now as well.
Funny, you should, not funny, but apropos, we are now given word that all three area airports are closed. So no activity whatsoever at LaGuardia, at Kennedy, or at Newark airports. Also, there is no subway service right now on the 1, 2, 3, 9, N, and R lines. So there is no subway service in and around the World Trade Center, and all three airports have closed. Just to bring you up to date, that as a result, I think we can say with fair amount of certainty right now, two planes, large, apparently commercial jets, deliberately crashed into first one tower of the World Trade Center, then the other, just scant minutes apart. You're looking at live pictures now of the tops, two split-screen pictures of the tops of the World Trade Center, one from a fixed camera, one from our own Chopper 5. And obviously, that is in the middle of the work day. Perhaps there is some significance that it is a primary election day. I don't know. But that is in the middle of a work day. All those floors on both towers of the World Trade Center are certain to have been occupied. And it doesn't look very promising for anybody who was caught in that terrible, terrible
I'm sure,
terrorist
Jim,
act.
officials would also want to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right ahead.
You're just talking to me. Yes,
I'm sorry. You go right ahead.
They're talking to me in my ear, but you make your point.
If there is anyone who is heading into the city for any reason, if it's not an emergency, stay away from the city. Stay away from the downtown area.
By all means. Perhaps we can talk to Kai Simonson. Kai, can you hear me? All right, that's a live picture from Kai Simonson. I'll try once again. We've had communications difficulties. I'll say once again because our part of our communications setup is on the top of that World Trade Center building, and that was knocked out shortly after the first plane crashed into the first building. But Kai, can you hear me at all? Obviously, Kai having some communications problems.
Here.
Yes, Ollie?
I must tell you that small pieces, well, they look small from here, but they're probably much larger than I believe, are falling from the scene of the site of the two. There goes a piece. So the authorities are clearing the area around. We still have pieces of debris coming down. Not a lot, but every now and every few moments, another piece of debris, looks like aluminum siding, comes lying down from the scene of the two fires.
Boy, again, the tower on the right of your screen seems to be the fire seems to be dying down a little bit, but the fire to the left of your screen still heavy, thick black smoke spewing out.
Just turn this.
We just told now, we received words that the Lincoln Tunnel and the Holland Tunnel are both closed. So, just as an aftermath of this terrorist act, terrible terrorist act, the ones I suppose we feared for the longest time, there is no service in or out of any of the airports. The Lincoln and the Holland tunnels are both closed. There is no subway service at all through downtown Manhattan. The 1, 2, 3, 9, N, R, any plane that goes near, any train rather, that goes near the World Trade Center has been discontinued. That as a result of what you see right there. Planes, two of them, one just minutes apart, one into one tower of the World Trade Center, the other into the other tower, causing devastation on the top floors of those buildings.
It wouldn't surprise me, Jim, even though right now we just have a tentative shutdown of the subway system, if indeed the mayor or authorities shut down transit just given the fact that there may be threats or a potential problem securing all of the major thoroughfares and tunnels throughout the city. Simply out of precaution, I would imagine that they might consider doing that over the next short term.
If there were two, there may be more. And you couldn't be too careful at this point. I understand we have another eyewitness to the catastrophe. Shaniqua, are you there?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you saw and heard, please?
Okay, my grandmother's friend, she came upstairs and told us that they was bombing the Twin Towers. So me and my grandfather, we looked out the window and we actually saw the airplane crash into the second tower.
Vivikwa, could you do me a favor, please? Could you turn your television, set the sound down?
Okay.
Maybe we're having trouble hearing you. Perhaps that's the cause.
Is that good enough?
Tell us again, if you would. I'm not sure we quite hear you well enough.
Okay, my grandmother's friend, she came upstairs and she was telling us how they was bombing the tower. So me and my grandfather, we started to look out the window and we actually saw the second plane crash into the second tower. We thought it was the airplane, but we not, because we wasn't too actually sure what type of airplane it was, but we know it was the airplane. And we heard the explosion and saw the fire.
Right. All right, we're having trouble communicating with Vivikwa Cohen, an eyewitness, but again, FBI in Washington is reporting that they have had reports of planes hijacked before the crashes took place. So one would suspect, one would believe that the FBI was investigating hijacked planes when those planes were diverted smack into the World Trade Center, both towers. I'm told also that Mayor Giuliani is preparing to hold a news conference about the disaster. As soon as that happens, of course, we will bring it to you live. Dave?
We might imagine, given that it's primary day, that the governor himself may also be in New York City on this date, given the importance of the day municipally.
If he isn't, I'm sure he's on his way.
One would hope that
absolutely
that he's not anywhere near that World Trade Center office. Ollie, anything new from your vantage point?
No, Jim, except that emergency vehicles are finding it difficult to get through, not only because of the crowds, but because of the pileup of emergency vehicles. As you know, we're at the south end of City Hall Park, and everything is pretty much frozen here, even though I have not seen ambulances come out of the scene. I have seen them go in. Hopefully that's a sign that there are not too many casualties as a result of this.
Thank you, Ollie.
Jim, do we have word, have they evacuated other landmark buildings like the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, etc.? Do we know
we have no word on that yet.
It just gives you such a horrible feeling that the city is under siege, which may not be true. This is enough with the World Trade Center, but it gives you such a helpless feeling.
Oh yeah, there's not much you can do at this point.
You also wonder if this is indeed a hijacking, if these planes were taken over, if the people who took over these planes actually were trained pilots and did the flying into these buildings themselves, or again forced these pilots to head on in.
That it would be an unusual pilot who would do that.
Exactly.
But I'm told we have another eyewitness, Tom O'Hara, on the phone. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell me what you heard and saw, please?
Actually, we were in our office building on 36th Street, and I went up to the penthouse where you have a straight downtown view. We saw the northwest tower on fire, and we saw either a slow-moving airplane go down, wrap around the tower, and then slam into the south tower in a ball of flames.
And could from 36th Street, could you hear what was going on?
I couldn't hear, but we had a straight-on shot completely downtown of all of the goings-on the two buildings.
All right, Tom, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So from 36th Street, looking across the tops of buildings, you can see it very clearly. We're told now that, in response to your point, Dave, that the city has shut down every place in and out of Manhattan. All the bridges, all the tunnels are closed. And again, all 3 airports are closed. So as a result of this, this double-barreled terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, the city has shut down the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge. Every way in and out of Manhattan is closed. And I presume that would be from, I'm sorry, and the East River crossings as well.
We are also told that the phone service in the building, we are having a problem with the phone service. The phones don't work. Joey was saying the cell phones, you can't get out on the cell phones,
cell phones
as
are
well.
out.
Yes.
This would be a good time to say, by the way, for those who are using the emergency services number 911 to somehow call and check on relatives or friends, this is the time, most importantly, when that line needs to be kept open for the true emergencies which are taking place in other parts of the city and indeed down on the southern tip of Manhattan at this hour.
Good thought. Again, all this as a consequence of what you see right there. Recapping for you, shortly before 9 o'clock and then shortly before after 9 o'clock, a plane apparently deliberately crashed into the upper floors of first one tower of the World Trade Center, then, as we were watching in horror, another tower of the World Trade Center. There you see the aftermath. And we have reports right now that the President of the United States, of course, this terrorist act not directed on us specifically here in New York City, but at the country. We are told that the President of the United States is preparing to go before the nation and comment on this disaster. You look the right side of your screen, the first tower of the World Trade Center seems slightly less engulfed in flames than the one on the left. That because that smoke seems to be much darker, indicating that the fire would be much more active. And I'm told that we have another eyewitness, Dan Lee. Are you there?
I am.
Dan, can you tell me what you heard and saw?
Yes, I was crossing 6th Avenue at West 4th Street, and there was a terrific noise overhead of a jet crossing over, which I noticed because it was, first of all, it was incredibly irritating that it was that loud directly over Manhattan. And as I'm watching this jet, thinking, why is it so low, I see that it's heading right for the Trade Center. And sure enough, it hit the World Trade Center and completely disappeared into the building. I saw no debris falling, really. It just vanished right into the building.
Were there many people around you when it happened, Dan?
There were several people in the crosswalk at 6th Avenue and West 4th, yes.
What was their reaction?
We all just froze and stood in the middle of the street in disbelief watching, and traffic stopped because we were in the way. And we just stood there for quite some time in complete disbelief of what we had just seen.
Where were you when the second blast took place?
I had managed at that point to walk the half block home, and I was watching the coverage on television, and that's when I saw the live picture of the second blast.
All right,
happening.
Dan, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts. Here now, the President of the United States on this disaster.
Terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
All right, the President, before a moment of silence for the victims of this terrorist act, telling the nation that the full resources of the government would be brought to bear on helping the victims and on finding out who precisely is responsible for this terrible, terrible attack on our country. Right there you see the aftermath, the World Trade Center towers, smoke billowing out of the upper floors. All those floors, I'm sure, fully occupied. The rescue attempts going forward as much as is possible, given the high floors of the tallest buildings in Manhattan, and given the number of people there. Dave?
Jim, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you may be able to provide some historical perspective. How long have the Twin Towers been up? And once again, the floor height, the number of floors, I think is
off the top of my head, somewhere in the 60s, as I recall, and it goes up, 102 floors or so, up to the Windows on the World restaurant there.
And if we remember from the last bombing, it took months and months and months before that structure was certified sound again and re-inhabited by...
in from the bottom.
Right, that was a bombing from the parking garage level of the tower.
That is something that, it's hard to watch this, but it's more bearable because I remember that particular bombing, and I was on the air all morning and all afternoon with that one, is that you saw the people that were being brought out on stretchers. You actually saw bodies and victims. And this, we're not seeing that yet, and we're hoping and praying that there are very, very few injuries. But just looking at this, it just, as you say, Jim, the carnage is just...
what we're looking at is just the long picture.
It would appear, Jim, as if there's more smoke coming from the ground at some point.
When we just have another, things have fallen to the ground and are burning. And we have another announcement now that you might have expected, and that is the Empire State Building is being evacuated. You're making the point, Lynn, that we are only seeing the long picture, if you will. We are not able to see, perhaps thankfully, inside those buildings and see what kind of devastation has been caused. We're told we have a pilot on the line, Richard Kornacek. Are you there, Richard?
Yes, I am.
Richard, were you up in the air when this took place?
No, I wasn't, but we fly alongside those buildings regularly on what they call the VFR corridor that goes up and down the Hudson River.
And did you see the attacks this morning?
Yes, I did.
What was your vantage point, and what did you hear and see, if you would?
Well, it appears that to fly an airplane right next to the Empire State Building or the World Trade Center, it's perfectly legal. You can do it under what they call VFR rules. And where those airliners apparently came from, it's really hard to say, and they may not have even been talking to the controllers. It's possible that they were hijacked either, quite a distance away, or no one knows where they actually came from. But the ability to fly right next to the World Trade Center is always been available to any pilot who wanted to exercise that privilege.
Excuse me, Lynn, but I just happen to live on the west side, and there's a regular route into LaGuardia that goes right up the Hudson River and then sort of banks right into LaGuardia. So it would not be unusual then to see planes flying near the World Trade Center, and as you say, Richard, it's not unusual. But these pilots must not have had any contact with the traffic control people or the FAA at all. Is that true?
Apparently not, because we've heard nothing contact with them. The airliners that come into LaGuardia, when they're over the and that higher corridor, they're at maybe 2,000, 2,500 feet. But you are also allowed to go down below 1,000 feet along that corridor. And one of the things they may have done is shut off on the airplanes. They have what they call transponders, which allow the controllers to identify particularly the aircraft. And they may have shut them off so the controllers could not actually see the airplane very well.
I see.
They would only have what they call a primary target, where it would be very difficult to track them. They'd have to go back and look at their tapes to see exactly where they came from.
Richard, this is Lynn Brown sitting here with Jim Ryan. You are saying that you are allowed to fly a plane that close to these buildings.
Yes.
Any particular type of plane? I mean, is a plane that big flying next to this type of building, wouldn't that seem a little out of the ordinary?
That would be unusual because the airliners are all required to be on IFR flight plans, and they would not normally be allowed to fly that low. However, it doesn't mean that someone could, that it would be absolutely unusual for a plane to large.
Where can the worried at?
Let the people who know what they're doing do it. Fidelity Funds Manager Program. To invest, call, click, or visit Fidelity.
This is a medicine. These are the cells in your body. Take most medicines and they scatter throughout your body to every cell. But right now, America's pharmaceutical company researchers are creating new smart medicines. They can ignore healthy cells and go straight to the disease. It may mean fewer side effects and increased effectiveness, leading to better ways to fight illnesses like leukemia, arthritis, and heart disease right where they live. Soon, there will be a lot more of these smart medicines. They'll zero in on disease, improve people's lives, and give families hope. You can bank on it. There are over 40,000 pharmaceutical company researchers in America, and they're the science behind new medicines and new hope.
It's off to college in an unconventional and industrious way, paying the high cost of tuition with corporate sponsorships. But what do the students have to do in return? Lou Dobbs' Moneyline, tonight 11:30 Pacific on CNN.
In an exclusive interview, Gary Condit's son, Chad, speaks out for the first time about his embattled father's dramatic media blitz and public struggle with the Chandra Levy controversy. Tonight, 12 Pacific on Larry King Live.
One of the temptations is to use Social Security money for something other than Social Security. Now, good news is that both political parties and both bodies of Congress have declared that we're not going to do that.
President Bush. We are back with our guest, Jake Tapper of CNN's Take 5, Sam McDonald, editor of Reason Magazine, Tish Durkin of the National Journal. They're in Washington because we're talking about what happens when Congress and the President get back to work. Sam McDonald, if in fact we are about to see a political war begin,